All right, we're going to keep looking at some classic East Coast hip hop, and today we're going to focus on the Wu-Tang Clan, who formed in 1992 in Staten Island, New York. Before I forget, there are 9 members. Old Dirty Bastard has passed away, so there are 8 living members, and they haven't put anything out since 2015. It was that Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, one copy made, sold it for $1 million. I've never heard it. It's probably out there. No idea. But they haven't put out anything in a long time, and the group seems to fight and make up, and some guys like each other, some don't. But it seems to be a real family where they always seem to not break the bonds, and they always make up in some way. So I think they're still a group. I'm not too sure what's going on. We're going to start off with 1993's debut album, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers. This has their old classic hits, Bring the Ruckus, Cream, Can It Be All So Simple, Protect Your Neck. I don't reach for this album too often, but I still got to give it a 5 out of 5. Just the originality, the longevity, the influence, and yes, the quality, even though I think the best Wu-Tang releases are on some solo albums that we're going to get to. My favorite song on here is definitely Cream. So the next album would be Wu-Tang Forever, a double album, huge deal when it came out, and I did have that, but I let someone borrow it in high school and it never found its way back to me. But the next album, The W, was probably the end of their most high-profile period. At least that's the way I remember it. This came out in 2000 on Loud Records. Gravel Pit was the lead single. But like Wu-Tang Forever, overall, I do enjoy it, but it's kind of 50-50. Definitely some stuff I would throw away. So we're going to get into the solo albums here. This is the debut solo album by RZA. And this is called Bobby Digital. I'm a big fan of this one. Very original. It seems to be a concept album of sorts, like an alter ego named Bobby Digital. But it's kind of got a futuristic theme. But it's not too out there. This one, every time, it just seems fresh. I recommend this one. Although RZA is basically the leader, I say Method Man is the most famous member of the group. He's done a lot of acting. His solo projects are quite popular. And just as a kind of a pop culture figure, he's the most recognizable. Classic album cover here. And this album, it definitely sounds like it looks. It's just kind of a smoky, dark, one-tone atmosphere to it. And that's why I actually didn't like it back in the day. I found it was kind of boring. Kind of like a Cypress Hill album. It just kind of sounds like the same song. But as I've gotten older, I like it. It's just kind of a one vibe record. And that was 1994. In 1998, he would put out his follow-up to Cal 2000, Judgment Day. And I thought this album was actually pretty bad. Too many skits. Nothing memorable. I haven't put this on in 20 years, probably. I'll look at these briefly because I did touch on them in my Redman video. Method Man did form a group with Redman, and they put out Blackout, this joint album. Very popular. And follow-up, Blackout 2, which wasn't as good as the first one, but it was a lot better than I thought it would be. I thought this was a really consistent album when I thought it would be pretty average. So this is the debut solo album by GZA, Liquid Swords. This was my first Wu-Tang album. and definitely a top 3, and one of my first hip hop albums, period. The other 2 were an Onyx album and an Ice-T album. But this is a 5 out of 5 without question. And my 3 favorites are Investigative Reports, Killa Hills 10304, and Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. Another classic, Only Built for Cuban Links by Raekwon. This was 1995 on Loud Records. My favorites are Heaven and Hell, Ice Cream, Glaciers of Ice, and Knowledge God. 5 out of 5 album. Ghostface Killah is all over it. And yeah, Raekwon and Ghostface, they seem to be pretty close, and their solo albums were very full of the other person. So Raekwon put out a couple more solo albums after this, but in, I don't know when this was actually, maybe 2008, he would put out an attempt to kind of make another classic, Only Built for Cuban Links, Volume 2. And I did find this to be a solid album, but I also haven't put it on in years, and I can't really give you any standout tracks off the top of my head. So speaking of Ghostface Killah, this is his debut album, Iron Man. And over the years, I've seen this in so many people's record collections. It's got to be one of the higher selling Wu-Tang releases. And one of the most praised. And although this is definitely a 4 out of 5 album, I think his best is still to come. Especially on his next and second solo album, Supreme Clientele. This is one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever. One of my favorite Wu-Tang albums for sure. And it's hard to name a favorite. The whole thing's amazing. The first 2, Nutmeg and 1, I'm probably most sentimental about them because, you know, back in the day, being a teenager using the Discman, the first 2 songs, I mean, wasn't the streaming days where you can just pick whatever you want all the time. You just kind of let it ride. So I guess those 2 songs mean the most to me. And I also like Child's Play near the end of the album. Just a couple days ago, I saw online, totally randomly, and I could be wrong on this, but it seems that the American edition had a silver jewel case, and this is a Canadian edition, which has the clear jewel case with a slightly different track listing. So, again, this is brand new information to me. So this album that I think is perfect, is it a slightly different edition than what most of the world's listening to? Might be. And also seems like this might be worth like $100. Not big money, but pretty good money for a CD. But I am definitely not selling it. So that was considered those first 2 Ghostface albums are considered his best, but I thought he was still going strong on 2001's Bulletproof Wallets, again with Raekwon. My favorite songs on here were definitely a couple of the more R&B oriented songs, Never Be the Same Again and Love Session. I'm definitely missing a couple. Got a big gap here, but in 2007, I did pick up The Big Doe Rehab. Not as good as the prior 3, but still a great CD. I like the one Tony Siegel with Beanie Siegel, and We Celebrate with Kid Capri. This is an album called Ghostface Killah Presents Ghostolini, Wizard of Poetry. This is a weird one for me. It came out in 2009, and my impression was that this is a Ghostface Killah album, but his attempt at an R&B release. And Ghostface is my favorite Wu-Tang member, and oftentimes I like his more commercial sounding stuff. So I had high hopes for this, and I got nothing bad to say about it. But this came out in 2009. I bought it the week it came out. I don't think I've ever listened to this whole thing from beginning to end. I don't know why. It's just been kind of memory hold. So most of these albums are going back to the racks, and this one's, it's going to the car. It's about time I play it. Mastakilla, no said date. Mastakilla is the first or second least known member of the 9 members of the Wu-Tang Clan, and I think this was the least, or the last member to put out their debut solo album. This was it, and I heard high praise from this. To my recollection, it's not quite as Wu-Tang sounding. It's more straightforward, gritty New York hip hop, but very consistent. A 4 out of 5 for sure. And finally, Capadonna, The Pillage. This is an older one. This is going back to 1998. And of all the Wu-Tang affiliates, side projects, friends of theirs, I always put Capadonna as the closest to being a real member, like the 10th unofficial member. Slang Editorial, the debut single, was awesome, but my favorite one is Milk the Cow, number 9. And again, I'm missing some Wu-Tang from my collection over the years. You sell stuff, you trade stuff, you lose stuff. I think I even had 1 or 2 stolen. But they have since... How many full lengths does Wu-Tang have? They have 7 as a group. And the last one was that special one that only had 1 copy made in 2015. So who knows what the future holds, but if I can leave you with anything, I would say that these 3 albums here are the greatest Wu-Tang related albums, and I really recommend them. Liquid Swords by the Jizza, Supreme Clientele by Ghostface, and Only Built for Cuban Links by Raekwon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.